Hey guys, welcome to the Liberal Hive Mind, a channel solely focused on exposing the abundant hypocrisy of the left. You can hear the leftoids screeching from a million miles away. Donald Trump is refusing to reply with a legal subpoena. He thinks he's above the law, like usual, is the narrative that they're probably pushing. I could pretty much read their minds at this point. But the reality, of course, is quite different. Donald Trump is not refusing to comply with a lawful subpoena. Donald Trump is fighting an unlawful subpoena. He's fighting legal persecution based on no merit, no actual probable cause. And guess what, folks? Donald Trump just won. The man just BTFO'd Liz Cheney and the rest of these January 6th committee goons, as the January 6th panel is now forced to drop their Trump subpoena. In other words, another massive W for Donald Trump and another L for Liz Cheney as she strikes out once again. The legacy of the January 6th committee continues to be that of absolute abject failure. Let me show you guys the latest update. We got some stuff to get into, so let's roll the tape. All right, friends, so take a look at this headline from the Daily Wire.
Yes, I see. Good news, everyone!
Lawyer Harmeet Dillon claims victory as January 6th panel drops Trump subpoena. Conservative attorney Harmeet Dillon is celebrating the House January 6th committee withdrawing its subpoena against former President Donald Trump. The victory for the Dillon Law Group, which Trump hired after being subpoenaed in October for testimony and documents, comes as Dillon is challenging Chairwoman Ronna McDaniel to lead the Republican National Committee, a change that I sincerely hope happens. Harmeet Dillon reminds me a little bit of Carrie Lake, an absolute superstar. After my firm filed suit on separation of powers grounds to block January 6th House Select Committee's illegitimate subpoena to President Trump over his activities while president, the committee waved the white flag and withdrew its subpoena, Dillon said in a tweet on Wednesday. We were confident of victory, she added, in court given precedent and a refusal of prior presidents to testify in Congress. The January 6th committee wasted millions for a purely political witch hunt, total abuse of process and power, serving no legitimate legislative purpose. Dillon shared a screenshot of a letter signed by the January 6th committee chairman, Benny Thompson, that announced the withdrawal and offered a brief explanation. As you may know, the Select Committee has concluded its hearings, released its final report, and will very soon reach its end. In light of the imminent end of our investigation, the Select Committee can no longer pursue the specific information covered by the subpoena, the letter said.
Blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, right, a bunch of cope from clown Benny Thompson. The real truth is that they got sued, and their abuse of power and frankly abuse of Congress was never legitimate to begin with. I mean, let's speak about a legitimate subpoena here. Theoretically, Congress can subpoena anyone that they want, but based on common sense, in order to seize or in order to search somebody, in order to request access and documents, you at least have to have probable cause. The January 6th committee never had real probable cause. Let's do a little bit of a flashback here.
Flashback.
FBI confirms that there was no insurrection on January 6th. The Cambridge Dictionary defines insurrection as an organized attempt by a group of people to defeat their government and take control of their country, usually by violence. Well, according to the FBI has found scant evidence that the January 6th attack on the US Capitol was a result of an organized plot to overturn the presidential election, according to 4 current and former law enforcement officials. 90 to 95% of these are one-off cases, said former senior law enforcement official with knowledge of the investigation. Then you have 5% maybe of these little militia groups that were more closely organized, but there was no grand scheme with Roger Stone and Alex Jones, and of course by extension Donald Trump, and all of these people to storm the Capitol and take hostages. The FBI confirmed that there was no insurrection. The FBI essentially debunked the January 6th committee's investigation over a year ago, yet they continued to pursue it and pursue this illegitimate subpoena, not to mention on top of it that there had already been legal precedents based on grounds of separation of power, which protects the president from having to testify in the first place or release presidential documents. Yet of course they pursued this subpoena anyways, to add legitimacy to their political kabuki theater January 6th nonsense. But in the end, it all continues to backfire and backfire spectacularly. Of course, they want this January 6th committee to conclude this year promoting their narrative that they found credible evidence and made a criminal referral to the DOJ DOJ, alleging that Donald Trump and his co-conspirators attempted to overthrow the government in an organized plot, but luckily history is generally written by the winners, and they certainly aren't the winners in this case. They have been defeated, they have been humiliated, embarrassed at every single turn. All the information that they've released, all their biggest bombshells like the Cassidy Hutchinson nonsense, the phony testimony, the falsified tweets and documents and falsified evidence, the endless gaslighting and the straight up fake news that Adam Schiff has been peddling on MSNBC and CNN. That right there is probably how this January 6th committee garbage is going to be recorded in the history books. As one massive sham, as an abuse of power, as frankly the legal abuse of a sitting president or a then sitting president and now former president. It's going to be a legacy of failure, a legacy of loss, embarrassment, and humiliation. A Congress so unhinged and deluded, so partisan and filled with vitriolic partisan rage that they sought to criminalize a former president because they didn't like him, because they viewed him as a political threat to their uniparty establishment rule. That's how history is going to write this stuff, because frankly, that is the truth, and their actions speak for themselves. But of course, as we know, they'll never admit it. Just as we saw in that Benny Thompson press release. We're withdrawing the subpoena simply because the January 6th committee is coming to an end. Frig off. I mean, seriously. They're never for 1 second going to admit the truth, that they lost, that they were wrong, that they blew this whole thing out of proportion, that they focused on Donald Trump instead of focusing on getting to the bottom of it, getting to the truth of what really happened. They're going to continue to tell you that there's credible evidence, even though they've produced absolutely zero credible evidence to suggest any of their claims or to tie Donald Trump into any conspiracy or organized plot to overthrow the government. They made their little request, their little referral to the DOJ. Merrick Garland would be an absolute fool to act on it. It's not going to happen. And even then, as they suffer their final legal blow, as the humiliation, the L's continue to pile up, or finally pile up with the final inevitable end of the January 6th Kabuki Theater sham trial, even then they will probably continue to deny and double down, claim that it's an injustice, a sad day in American history where the former president gets away with his crimes once again. But at least in the end, we know the truth now, don't we? These partisan hacks are losers, and losers will continue to lose. Liz Cheney, Nancy Pelosi, Jamie Raskin, Benny Thompson, Adam Kinzinger's little January 6th witch hunt, their final attempt to stop Donald Trump from being able to run in 2024 has failed, fallen flat on its face, and they will forever be known and go down in history as partisan hacks and partisan losers, period. That's what I got for you guys. Hopefully you enjoyed this video. If you did, make sure to leave a like and possibly subscribe to the channel if you guys are up for it. I gotta get out of here. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.